Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we review books of every genre, looking for the best of fun escapist books. And today we're reviewing a book called Not They Who Soar by Amanda Flower. This is a historical murder mystery, and it takes place during probably the 1900s. This is the point of view. The main character is Amanda Wright, the younger sister of Wilbur and Orville Wright, who invented airplanes and flight. So she was a real character. I thought at first she was a made-up fictional character, but no, she was a real character. So the author took her and used her to become a detective in various situations. I found out this is actually the second in a series. It doesn't really make any difference, but there was one with this character before this book. I don't remember what it was called because I haven't read it. Let me just see really quick here at the beginning if it tells me. Nope, I don't see it. To Slip the Bonds of Earth. It's Catherine Wright Mysteries, if you end up wanting to see that. Okay, so this book, let's start with the plot. Catherine, at the beginning, is just getting off a train. She has arrived at St. Louis during the World's Fair. And she is there visiting some friends and just going to basically tour the World's Fair. During this World's Fair, there are apparently some aeronautic competitions. So a bunch of dirigibles, because during this time, flight meant ballooning, not planes or helicopters or anything of that nature. So so there's a bunch of people that are involved in that, mechanics and people, sponsoring or whatever, because that's going to be the big thing at this World's Fair, is the ballooning dirigible thing, competition. Anyway, while she's there, she comes across somebody who's been murdered. And obviously, she wants to stick her nose into it and figure out what's going on and who did it and why and all the details as a typical murder mystery. All right, so that's our plot. The things I like. So the main thing I really liked about this was the setting, the World's Fair. I mean, I wanted to be there after reading just, hints of descriptions. It just sounded like all sorts of fun. All sorts of things going on. It was very chaotically full of arts and technology and food, and you had pavilions from all sorts of different countries because this was a World's Fair. I don't even know if they do World's Fairs anymore. I don't think so. But anyway, they had all sorts of different countries involved in this, having showcases and pavilions of things to basically tell the world how wonderful their country is. And that to me would be fascinating. The author did not give nearly enough time on the historical aspects of that because that would have been really interesting to attend. After reading that, I'm like, I want to be there. I want photographs of this. I want to have experienced this. If there was a World's Fair anywhere nearby, I would go. So I liked that part. And they also had some details about that. Like, for example, how many of the buildings were fake that were just, quickly slapped together, like the buildings, not just for the show buildings, but buildings for the workers. They have little wooden structures that don't even have a foundation. They're just built right on the dirt so that their workers can have some place to sleep off shift. Just things like that, little details about that. I just found that very interesting. So the historical fiction part of this book was excellent. Unfortunately, that's pretty much the only thing about this book I really liked. Everything else I disliked. So let's start with our main character. I wouldn't say I actively disliked her, but I didn't really like her or relate to her or anything like that. So she is a teacher, and that's probably historically accurate, but her personality is a little bit, I don't know. She's the kind of person that in this, for example, they come to a door and it says, authorized personnel only. And she's like, oh, that's just a suggestion, and walks right through, having no shame about doing that, no compunction, just like, whatever. And I'm just like, that's not me. I wouldn't do that. I would have at least hesitated. Have to have a really good reason to walk through that door, and she didn't really have one. Or they're at the World's Fair, and she's with her friend, her companion, that they're doing this, and all she is focused on is this murder mystery and this, who is that person? Who was that masked man? No, there was no masked man, but you get the idea. Whereas her friend is all like, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see this fair. Let's go see it. And she's like, no, I'm all, this is fine, whatever. But I'm really interested in this World's Fair, this murder mystery. I don't care about the World's Fair. And, again, it was just, I would have had completely opposite priorities there. I probably would have been like, the police can handle the murder mystery. Let's do the World's Fair. That's just me. So things like that. She comes across as very nosy and all about what she wants a little bit more than anything else. She is compassionate. Yes, the poor woman that died, but I don't know. I just didn't really like her as a character. But again, I didn't dislike her, I just didn't like her. The situation with her circumstances. So Catherine's circumstances are full of coincidences that just pile on top of each other in order to force her into this murder mystery. And especially at the beginning of the story, and it felt totally contrived, unrealistic. So for example, she gets off the train and somebody is running by, help! And, people behind her, stop that woman! And absolutely everybody else around her completely ignores the situation. She reaches out to stop the woman, and she looks at her and says, I need help! And then, tugs her arm away and keeps running off. And she asks the people around, did you see that woman? And they're all like, what woman? I don't even know what you're talking about. It felt stupid. A little bit later, she happens to be in just the right place at just the right time to see this same woman again several more times. Excuse me. And that, again, she's at a crush of humanity. This is a super crowded area, not just the train station, but because of the World's Fair. And she keeps seeing this person, and she keeps running into other people that she happens to know. And it just felt like, out of 100,000 people, how do you happen to know everybody? It just seems weird. I didn't like that. I thought there were too many coincidences that struck me as so unrealistic that I had a hard time getting into it. There was also a little bit too much lecture on racism and the role of women in society at that time, which is completely unrealistic. People would not be lecturing each other about how horrible the situation is, otherwise they wouldn't be living in that situation. But constantly, it just seems like little sprinkles here and there of somebody being like, and the exploited people, pay attention to the exploited people, and oh, women, we can do little steps to change things, and I'm just like, whatever. So that one irritated me more than anything else. Sure that there are exploited people, and yes, women didn't have the best rights at that time period, but I don't want to be lectured about it in a novel like this. So I didn't like that. The police are buffoons. Total incompetence in a way that irritated me, not in a way that was funny. So for example, the police come to a person who's just died, and the first police officer comes and is like, oh, what do I do? What should I do? I don't know what to do. And so our main character has to give him some suggestions. Do you want to question me about anything? Do you want to get a superior officer? And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I better do that. And then the superior officer comes and takes one look at the body, who's been stabbed in the back, and goes, she probably committed suicide. Yeah. Even me, who knows nothing about murders, could come up with a better answer than that. And the author seems to have done this to boost our main character, and I hate that when authors do that. When they're basically like, I cannot make my own character clever enough, so you know what, I'm going to make everybody around them an idiot to make my character look better. And I'm just like, I don't like that idea. Why did they have to make the police that stupid? I found that irritating. There are some, I would consider them editing mistakes more than anything else, although I'm not talking like grammar or the writing, but writing problems that an editor should have caught. So, for example, on page 79 in this book, this is after the murder has taken place. So the way the murder happened is they're wandering around, and I won't give all the details, but they're wandering around, and she sees the girl from the train running away from her, and she's like, "Stop!" So Catherine chases after her, and the girl rounds a building. And then several seconds, we'll just say 30 seconds later, she rounds the building, and the person is on the floor bleeding out, and she crouches by her, and the person comes up and says, "Aeronautics competition," and dies. And Catherine's like, "Oh, poor woman, I wonder what her name was." And later, page 79, says, "The mortician told us that she'd been dead for several hours before discovery." And you're sitting there going, no, she was alive when she was found. She was dead momentarily before the police showed up. Not that they ever bothered to check that she was dead, but she was clearly dead. Now, this wasn't like a red herring, like a clue for the murder mystery or anything. It was just, it's poor writing to say that the mortician has declared that she was dead for several hours before discovery when she clearly wasn't. I mean, that's just an editing error. And there were problems with, I felt, way too much showing instead of, telling instead of showing. Somebody saying, "You are so fantastic at this thing," but you never actually see them being fantastic at this thing. Or the character looks at another character and is like, "That person is clearly suspicious. I can't trust anything that they're saying." And that is not subtle, okay? To be able to just flat out say that. I mean, it should be more, he's acting in a suspicious way, and that the author portrays that in a suspicious way in some way, hints at it. And so the reader picks up on that. It doesn't need to be told to you, "He is suspicious." I mean, I think that's poor writing. So overall, I was not impressed. I really wasn't. I do not have good success, honestly, with mystery books. I have not. The percentage of good versus bad has, I think, been more bad than good out of the ones that I've gotten and reviewed. And I don't know why that is. Like, are there just poor standards for murder mysteries out there? Why is it there's so many that are so bad? It should be able to have good writing. And this did not, I don't think, had. So I don't recommend this book. I'm gonna give it a disappointed. It's kind of in between disappointed and just okay, but I didn't think the mystery itself was all that interesting. Like, as we're going along, the character and the author keeps trying to drag your attention towards the mystery, and I'm kind of like, no, the historical fiction would be a lot more interesting. Like, if they did it as this person just going around touring the fair, it probably would have been a more interesting book. But the mystery itself did not engage me. I mean, I thought it was very contrived, all the different things. There were several things that were, surprises that were clear, and the things that weren't clear were because you weren't given any information ahead of time to figure it out. So I didn't like, this was not a murder mystery where you were given clues and maybe you could find it by the end. It was more just, right before something is revealed, you might get a clue, and then as soon as it's revealed, you're like, oh, that's what it was. The clue was pointing to that, obviously. And I don't know. I didn't think it was a very good mystery. So, yeah. I'm going to say this is going to go in my disappointment file, unfortunately. If you like poor mysteries, then you could try it. But, yeah, not excited. Okay, part 2 would be what I'm going to do next. I ran across a free book on Amazon Prime Reading that was called The Wizard's Butler. And it sounds like a quirky fantasy. I mean, it's all from the butler's point of view of somebody who's a wizard. And it takes place very clearly in modern day. Like, they have computers and the internet. It's present day, just with a wizard, with hints of fantasy thrown in. And then the butler who is learning to butler. He's like, I've never done this before, so he's kind of learning the ropes as you go along. So, like I said, that sounds very different, quirky, interesting. So I'm going to try that one next, even though I've done, lighthearted, cozy fantasy just recently. I don't care. I'm going to do another one and see if it's any good. So I hope you will join me. Thank you for watching.